This is the Dummies Guide to Kamisato Ayato. This is going to be a very short and concise video regarding Ayato in a very easy to digest manner. It is going to be going over his talents, his weapons, his artifacts, the teams he should be on, and his general uses, and some nice facts to know regarding this character. This is meant to be a very simple and fast guide so that you are able to understand how good this character is and if you should summon for this character. Now let's get right into the video. First, let's get into Ayato's talents. Although these aren't very complicated, there are some details about these talents that you should know about. First, let's talk about his normal attack talent, which of course is something we should go ahead and skip, as you are not supposed to be leveling up this talent, as it does not affect his damage in any way, shape, or form, and is not needed for any of his uses. Now let's get into his more important talents, which is his skill. His skill is going to be putting Ayato into a stance. This stance will deploy a clone, and this clone can explode once an enemy attacks it or an enemy gets near it. Regarding this stance, there is a mechanic that goes with it, which is called the Namisen stack. Now the Namisen stack scale off of your max HP, which shouldn't be really much of an importance when building your Ayato. This is just something to add onto it. But with the Namisen stacks, you get 2 once you get into this stance, once you press your E or your skill. And then once you're, the little blue guy that spawns, your decoy that Ayato will drop on the field, you really want this to hit the enemy, because once this hits the enemy, your Namisen stacks will increase, which will of course give you more damage increase, as the more Namisen stacks you have, the more damage you get. So you really want to pop your E in the middle of a field of enemies or near your enemy as close as possible in order to get the highest damage boost as you can with your E. So basically all you have to do is pop your near enemy. You'll get the 2 Namisen stacks from deploying your E, and then you'll get the other 2 from having the clone explode near the enemy. And then once you're done with that, you will have your Hydro infused normal attacks, and this is going to be doing a lot of damage in a very big area. Ayato has very great AoE, so he's going to be able to hit a lot of enemies at once, and this helps a lot when having a lot of your enemies infused with Pyro, or having them infused with Electro. Really keep these reactions going as long as you have the right elemental applicants to be able to do so. Next, let's talk about Ayato's burst. Ayato's burst is very similar to Ganyu's, as it makes a big circle and has rain fall down onto enemies. Now these droplets do scatter around to different enemies. It doesn't just go onto one. As many enemies that are in this ring, it will perform raindrops that will drop on each one periodically, and this is a great source of hydro application. Not only will this burst have periodic damage on different enemies, allowing for many enemies to be infused with hydro and take periodic damage, you will also get a normal attack boost. So what you would want to do is use Ayato's burst and then go ahead and use the skill. This will allow you to do the most damage when doing your rotation with Ayato. Now let's talk about artifacts with Ayato. Now for his artifacts, I'm going to be recommending the Heart of Death 4-piece set. This is a little bit of a better resin efficient domain, as you'll be able to grind not only this artifact set but also the Blizzard Stray artifact set for cryo units, and I overall think is the easier set to get done. Now he does have a best in slot artifact set, which is Piece of an Offering, but there are issues regarding ping, not being able to hit the 4-piece set bonus often enough. It's just an overall better bet to go for Heart of Death in my opinion, although he does have a best in slot, which is Piece of an Offering. Like I said, go for Heart of Death. I promise you, you will not regret it. It is not that big of a damage difference. Now let's talk about Ayato's best swords. Now for a lot of characters, the 5-star options are going to very heavily outweigh the 4-star options for those that are free to play. We're talking about his signature sword, the Haran Gippaku Futsu. I'm sorry if I butchered that name. The Jade Cutter, the Mist Splitter, all of these very premium option swords are going to be his very best options, as they will increase his damage by a very big amount. There are some 4-star alternatives that you can use, stuff like the Black Sword to get your crit rate up, the Amenoma Kageuchi. This is going to be helping his energy recharge, getting his ult up, which is, like I said before in this video, having his ult up increases your normal attack damage, which then increases your skill damage. So having this sword isn't going to be that bad for free to play. Like I said, a lot of his best swords are pay to play type weapons, but you can find some nice alternatives out there, and maybe in the future you'll find some better free to play weapons coming from some of different events. Now let's talk about Ayato's best teams. Now that Ayato is a Hydro unit, he can be put in a different amount of teams, specifically more because his ult does have a high amount of Hydro coverage, periodically adding Hydros to different enemies within his ult. This is going to give him a lot of different uses for a lot of different teams, and you can play around with this as you want. But he does have two standard bread and butter comps, which is his DPS Vape team and his Perma Freeze comp team. Now for his big numbers, big damage per screenshot type team, you are going to be wanting to want the Vape team. Now this Vape team consists of Ayato, an animal unit, more specifically Venti or Kazuha. Of course you can substitute Sucrose in, but Kazuha will be the bigger damage booster for Ayato, Yunjin, and a Shielder or Bennett. Now of course the Shielder for more practical uses for like Spiral Abyss, Bennett for more damage in itself but bigger damage boost. Now for his Perma Freeze team, you are going to be wanting to run Ayato, a periodic cryo applicant, an animal unit, and a filler unit. This filler unit can be somebody like another cryo unit, another hydro unit, or even a shielder, which isn't very much needed because the enemies are going to be frozen for most of the time as long as they're not bosses. Now for the periodic cryo dealer, you can use somebody like Ganyu because Ayato and Ganyu's ults are very alike, as you can see in the gameplay here. It's going to be very easy for you to apply cryo and hydro, keeping the enemies frozen for a very long time. And the animal unit will make that happen even easier with swirling around cryo or hydro, making it a lot easier to freeze enemies. These are the two main teams that you can use with Ayato, and they're both very fun to play. Now answering the question, is Ayato worth it? Well, regardless of his very small option of swords to pick from in a free-to-play aspect, he does fulfill a very easy and big role to fulfill in Genshin, which is a primary DPS character. Now, in many regards, there are many units that are just like him. Hu Tao, Zhao, Ganyu, Ito. There's so many different characters that fulfill this role. But Ayato being a Hydro character, his ult covering a wide range and having a periodic Hydro application puts him in a very good spot in a lot of different teams because you can play around with his Hydro application in many different ways. Him being Hydro is already a plus for him. Now, in my opinion, Ayato, very fun, has a big AoE range for his skill. I do think he fulfills a really good role and a very easy role to pick from in terms of who you should pick. If you think Ayato is your playstyle, he's a very easy, simple character to play with, does good damage, hits a lot of enemies. If you think this is your playstyle, then I say you should go ahead for him. Because like I said, many different DPSs are going to have different playstyles and he's one of many. So if he fits your playstyle, go ahead and summon for him. He's a really good character. You will not regret it. And this is the Dummies Guide to Ayato.